my fellow Christian fiction lovers, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite books that I read in 2021, and yeah, that's the video. I mean, basically every YouTuber is doing that. I know this video is a little late considering we're halfway through January at this point, but I wasn't planning on doing this video until somebody very kindly asked for it, and I was like, why not? You know, why not? Everybody's doing it. So I kind of calculated my favorites in an odd way, not an odd way, just different than I'm used to. So I do have a shelf on Goodreads titled My 2021 Favorites, and almost every 5-star I read went into that shelf, but I wouldn't say every single 5-star I read was one of my favorites. I don't know if that makes sense, but I did do a 2021 book of the year, which I did share in my 2021 wrap-up video, and the way I calculated that was like, what is this called? Like bracket style, like March Madness style basically, but only one side of it, and it culminates to the winner. So I think I would rather share with you guys the books that were the contestants, basically the contestants for that, and then how I got to my 2021 book of the year, because I will be doing the same thing for 2022. That was a very long intro. I'm just going to be sharing with you these 12 books. So for January, my favorite was A Family of Strangers by Emilie Richards. I forgot, it's been like a year. And this book was my first book of the year. I really enjoyed it. It is not Christian fiction, but it was basically about this young woman who goes and basically takes care of her sister's 2 children, well, her nieces. Through taking care of them, she reunites in a way with her ex-boyfriend, who is an ex-cop, and basically uncovers this whole mystery about her sister and this, like, I don't want to spoil it, but basically this double life that her sister leads. And it was very interesting, super entertaining. I'm not sure if I would love it so much now, but I really enjoyed it at the beginning of last year. It was just a super fun, like, story, just escapism style story. And then my favorite for February was The Forgotten Home Child by Genevive Graham. This book was absolutely amazing, blew me out of the water. I remember, this is sometimes how I figure out if a book was like really good. If when I finish it, I just sit and like have to stare at the wall and think about it for a little bit. And sometimes I do that multiple times, like a couple days after I read it, I'll just be like, wow, that was a really good book. And that was how it was when I finished The Forgotten Home Child. I just kind of sat and like stared at the back cover of it, like not like reading it, just thinking, oh my goodness. This book, sorry, I'm just talking about how much I love it, but this book follows 2 orphaned children from the streets of London, I believe, who are sent on the ships that Britain like sent over, of all like the orphaned children who roamed the streets of London. They sent them to Canada to be hopefully adopted, but most of them were not adopted. They were unfortunately put to like slave style work. And it follows these 2 orphans that are separated, like they travel together, then they're separated, and eventually they're reunited, and it just goes through their whole lives, and it's so brilliant, and just, it really took my breath away. It is also not Christian fiction, funny enough. First two favorites are not Christian fiction, but I deeply loved it, and I did read another Genevieve Graham book this year and also deeply loved it. She is one of my favorite non-Christian writers. Then in March, my favorite was To Dwell Among Cedars by Connilyn Cossette. There are more than one Connilyn Cossette books on here. But To Dwell Among Cedars follows, it's the first book in her most recent duology, and it follows a young woman who escapes from, I'm gonna have to pull out the big guns for this one, I can't remember the exact place she escapes from. Okay, she escapes from a Philistine country, and it's basically like accepted into this Jewish family. Yeah, gosh, thinking is hard today for some reason. She is accepted into this Jewish family, and the whole story is basically about her journey with the Ark of the Covenant and being accepted by God and her family, and it's just so beautiful and so heartwarming. And I love Connilyn Cossette like with a burning passion. Her writing is phenomenal, and I will die on that hill that she is the best biblical fiction author out there. Then in April, my favorite was The Paris Dressmaker by Kristy Cambron. This book was some of the best like historical fiction writing I've ever read. So imaginative, so creative, so just descriptive, and I want to reread this book maybe this year, probably next year, because it's so rich and the story is, there's so much in the story that the first go around it took me a while to understand what was going on. And I think if I were to go back now, obviously knowing how it ends, I would grasp the story and all the concepts from the beginning a bit better. No, a lot better. But it was still a phenomenal book. And I have a full review on it. It's a bit old, so I might do an updated one if I ever reread it. In May, my favorite book was When Twilight Breaks by Sarah Sundin. This is my first Sarah Sundin book. I was not expecting bad things, but I was kind of expecting it to be a bit more like rom-com, cheesier than it actually was. I was quite impressed by the story of just these two characters overcoming so much and growing closer through it all. I so enjoyed that book. I was so caught up in it. I remember I read a couple chapters one day, and the next day I had off of school, and I had so many plans for that day, and I was like, I'm gonna read for half an hour and then like go do some of these other plans. And literally 3 hours later I was done with the book, and I remember going downstairs and telling my mom, I just finished this amazing book. Like, I rarely do that, but I just had to tell someone, this book was absolutely amazing and I loved it so much. She was like, what was it? And I said, a World War II novel, and she wasn't surprised. No one's surprised. Okay, moving on. In June, my favorite was Wings of the Wind by Connilyn Cossette. It is the final book in the Out of Egypt series, and it follows a woman named Alana, who is not originally Hebrew, but she is basically like taken prisoner by a Hebrew, and it's just her journey of, you know, coming to know God and know this culture and know these people who she just doesn't understand how they can love her so much. And in that book, we are also introduced to the main character of the first book in the Cities of Refuge series, which I have also read. I've read everything by Connilyn Cossette, and I thought that was so cool. So if you haven't read any Connilyn Cossette books, I definitely recommend reading them in the order of publication, because there's like little Easter eggs of things in each one that are repeated in later books. And sometimes, like in this one, you are introduced to a main character that you see in a later one. In July, Under the Magnolias was my favorite novel. I have talked about Under the Magnolias quite a lot, and spoiler alert, Under the Magnolias was my book of the year. It is by T.I. Lowe, and basically it just follows this young woman who, we start the book when she's like 11 or 12, I think, and then we follow it through to her being a young woman in college. And it's all about how she basically supports her entire family after her mother's death, with them dealing with their father's bipolar depression. And I just felt the representation of a young woman dealing with supporting someone who is going through depression was so accurate. As someone who knows what that is like, I just loved it, and it deeply resonated with me, specifically at that time in my life. A lot has happened since July concerning my personal life, but I just remember relating to this character of Austin so much and feeling like my situation was represented so well in a book. And yeah, that's why it's my book of the year, and that's why I treasure that book so much. In August, The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton was my favorite. This was my longest book of the year, and I wow, I have a lot of things I could say about it, but it was a lot to read. There was a lot of plot in this book. It was kind of split time, and I just recommend you go read it for yourself because I really don't have time to share about it in this video because this video is also already going to be very long. So moving on, in September, Yours is the Night by Amanda Dykes was my favorite book. Along with The Paris Dressmaker, like I have very similar comments about Yours is the Night as I did for The Paris Dressmaker. The writing, so creative, so descriptive. I saw some pretty bad reviews for Yours is the Night where people said that the writing style was too much, but I disagree. It was so flavorful and so, okay, it's like this. It's like some books are like eating an ice cream, like getting an ice cream from a stand and like walking away, and you only pay a couple of dollars for it. And then some books are like sitting down in a European ice cafe and ordering the special concoctions that they make out of ice cream and syrup and special drinks, and it's just, you pay more for it, but you're paying for the experience and the flavor, and it's absolutely brilliant. And that is what this book is. Long story short, that is what this book is. It is like eating a special ice cream creation. I don't know why that's the example my brain went to. Probably because I'm missing European ice cafes. Then in October, The Chair by James L. Rubart was my favorite book. This was a like speculative suspense novel about this weird chair, not weird, but like this chair that this antique dealer is given that is the person who gives it to him basically hints that it was made by Jesus when he was like a carpenter, and it's this man's whole journey of like figuring out if this chair was made by Jesus, and this whole personal journey of faith and doubt for him. And it was quite interesting, and I did really enjoy it because I don't normally enjoy that genre. That's why it was my favorite for the month. And then in November, we have another T.I. Lowe book, and that is Lulu's Cafe. I just so loved this super sweet story of this woman who basically escapes an abusive relationship and runs away to this little southern town and is just loved on and accepted by these people and gets a job at Lulu's Cafe, and Lulu basically becomes like her mom in a sense. And I just loved it. It really warms my heart, and I felt that the way this woman's trauma was, like the way she dealt with it and the way it came out in the story was very well represented and not too rushed. It wasn't like, oh, I got accepted and loved by these people, so I'm over everything that happened in California. No, like she dealt with it and recovered, and I think T.I. Lowe writes characters so well. I want to read more of her books. And then finally in December, my favorite book was If I Were You by Lynn Austen, and this was my first Lynn Austen book. I want to read more. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The way it followed these two women during World War II. One was, she came from a very poor background, and the other came from a very rich background, and they are friends and they go through this war together, and just basically the struggles of jealousy of one another and of dealing with this war based on their past. It was such like like almost a study into everyday lives, and everybody is jealous of someone for something, whether it is the rich being jealous of the poor for the loving families they have, or the poor being jealous of the rich for the status they hold and that they don't have to struggle to get what they want. And I just thought it was such an interesting way of putting this. And then smack dab in the middle of World War II, such a good book. And I know I posted a reading blog of it, and some of you guys said you read it and had similar thoughts, which was awesome. I love when I read books and I share thoughts and then people are like, you were spot on. I'm like, yes, I'm doing my job right. So those are all 12 books that were my favorite for every month. I have a few more favorites on my Goodreads shelf. I had 18 books, but funny enough, not all of those books were on that shelf when I checked it. I might need to update it a little. But let me know your 2021 favorites. I would love to hear them. Obviously would love some recommendations. And books don't have to be like 5 stars to be your favorite. I oftentimes give star ratings based off of the quality, but sometimes the story is what really resonated with me, and that's what made it my favorite. But this video is long enough, so that is all I'm going to leave you with. Let me know your thoughts, recommendations, all the things. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video, whenever that is. Until then, bye!